If there's one thing to be certain of, it's that certainty is overrated. A strange thing happens in most organizations where people are determined to be correct. And this determination seems to throw out the idea of asking good questions that drives creativity, that uncovers new mysteries that they would otherwise have never uncovered. This obsession with being correct draws people away from more creative thinking with discoveries that can only be found by asking better questions. You've been in a meeting, probably this week, where people sit and wait to talk. They've decided what they're going to say long before they get the opportunity to say it. And that's because they're not listening. They're not part of a dialogue. They're waiting to talk because they've decided that what they have to say is correct. They're not participating in the conversation. They're waiting for the opportune moment for them to be able to say what they've already decided. They talk at one another instead of genuinely engaging in a conversation where new ideas may change their point of view. And this closedness is exactly the opposite of what I'm hoping for you. I want you to be more open-minded, and more probabilistic in your thinking about how you spend your time. And that means behaving more open, not just feeling or wanting to be more open. Life is a complicated game, and by being more open, you embrace the possibility that complex challenges come with equally complex solutions. Here's a quote I love warning you against certainty. Nothing undermines openness more surely than certainty. Once we feel as if we have the answer, all motivation to question our thinking disappears. There simply is no right answer when dealing with complexity. I think you know what I mean when I say that life is complicated. And we can boil this down to the complexity of problems. Deterministic problems have a single answer, and probabilistic problems can have many. We can think about this another way. Here's another quote. Convergent problems have a solution. The more intelligently you study them, the more answers converge. Divergent problems have no correct solution. The more they are studied by people with knowledge and intelligence, the more they come up with answers which contradict one another. So convergent problems are just deterministic problems. And divergent problems, the more interesting of the two, are probabilistic problems. Life's toughest challenges are divergent, probabilistic problems, and their complexity makes critical thinking and subconscious pattern matching the best approach to finding a solution that may work. The mistake is believing that a single solution, a shiny diamond of an idea, lies waiting to be discovered if we just think logically enough about the problem. And by thinking probabilistically or divergently, it means that there are innumerable choices that we could make, each with varying probabilities of success. And this is where thinking in bets becomes incredibly important, because not only do those divergent probabilistic problems have many possible solutions, each with varying probabilities of success, but those variables also change while the game is in play. Put simply, or another way, life is really tough. And the closer you are to the correct answer to a complex problem, the further you are from a useful one. To boil it down, when I hear someone give me a quick, easy answer to a very complicated problem, I genuinely do not believe that they've given it the thought that it deserves. And this is why I'm asking you to be more sure of your uncertainty. You're someone who wants to make inroads with the people you work with, and the people in leadership positions are older with more experience. And if you have good leaders, they will come to understand that pattern matching is an exceptionally powerful tool in making life's toughest choices. Good leaders will value good questions more than quick answers. Imagine a scenario where a manager comes to you and asks you the following question. We're going to need to make some cuts to the team. Who do you think we could do without? Now imagine these two responses that you could give to that answer. 1. Jamie is always late with their work and I could do without them. 2. What criteria do we use to make a decision this tough? The comment about Jamie being late may be relevant, but may come across as abrupt and not meeting the seriousness of the question. The second response, which asks an open-ended question, deepens and clarifies the criteria by which you're being asked to have input. I could give you 1,000 more examples of why questions are more useful than certainty. But for now, I'm asking you to ask more open-ended, probabilistic questions that begin with how or what. You need to be careful not to trigger people's defensiveness when asking questions. Avoid deterministic questions that begin with who or why. We learn in childhood that who and why questions lead to tears before bedtime. And you should avoid these sorts of questions because they'll trigger people's defensive responses. It will sound like you're making an accusation. Who or why questions are deterministic, and I prefer questions that invite people to be collaborative and open-minded and probabilistic in their thinking. Here are some examples. Why did you think it was a good idea to talk to John about that? Who knows where Daniel is? Even if I put the inflection on words other than who or why, the brain will pattern match what it thinks the emphasis should be on based on your experience. Why did you think it was a good idea talking to John about that? Who knows where Daniel is? Why did you think it was a good idea talking to John about that? Who knows where Daniel is? Always assume the most negative reading of your questions and statements, especially if it's in writing. I'm asking you to use more questions than statements because they're more collaborative, but that doesn't mean that they can't be misread as aggressive or accusatory. Make life easier for the people you communicate with by using any unfair advantage that you have and knowing that what or how are less risky than who or why is an unfair advantage. Granted, the examples I'm giving here are high stakes, but you can take advantage of more uncertainty in more everyday scenarios. The creativity that comes with a well-constructed, well-timed question will take people by surprise and upend their expectations of you, opening doors that no amount of obedience would open for you. People in positions of authority need people below them who have a high degree of obediency, but they are constantly looking for people below them to elevate, and those people have good critical thinking skills and a high degree of trust in their pattern matching experience. People respect thoughtful consideration as soon as complexity enters a conversation. A good way of thinking about this is if a problem has a single deterministic answer, is the stapler red or blue, then respond with them with the simple answer. But when it comes to the flavor of life, when people ask you questions that matter, and when you have the opportunity to turn heads to demonstrate how much you care with creativity and deftness that can take people by surprise, do not disappoint by giving a lazy, unimaginative answer that could have come out of a dozen other people's brains. By being more certain about your uncertainty and by asking more questions than giving answers, all relationships in your life will be enhanced. You'll notice people will treat you differently when your need for certainty is replaced by inquisitiveness. More people will ask you for advice. People will begin to think of you as someone who enjoys a deeper level of thought that requires being uncertain about life's mysteries. People will come to see you as a constructive collaborator who asks good questions that nobody else will. Good questions that test and validate assumptions, resulting in better decisions and better outcomes that improve your standing in people's minds.